Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and I am back in Las Vegas, and I am going to be doing a bunch of video game hunting. There is a chain of retro gaming stores down here that I haven't been to in, several years. So long that they've actually moved locations, and so I'm excited to check these out. I think you guys are going to dig this. Lots of really cool stuff to show you. Let's take a look. I'm taking the train from Seattle down to the airport, and it's cold and gray, and it's a good thing that I checked the weather before leaving because I assumed, it's the middle of winter, it's going to be cold in Las Vegas too, and not quite. It's funny because I assumed I'm just going to need a pair of pants and maybe a winter jacket, but like I said, I checked the weather, and it's crazy down there in Vegas because essentially it starts off in the morning in the 40s. Like it's barely above freezing, but then by the afternoon, it gets into the mid 70s. It's crazy. So yeah, you'll be all cold in the morning, but then you're wearing t-shirt and shorts by the afternoon. It's insane. But we get down into Vegas and we check into the hotel, and I look around and I am shocked because I thought Vegas was going to be dead. You hear all the time that nobody's going to Vegas anymore, and that was certainly not the case for me. As you see here, there's tons of people on the Strip. Now, I assume that probably, yes, maybe tourism's off a little bit in Vegas, but man, it's like, I didn't notice it at all. But what is true is that it costs a lot to eat on the Vegas Strip. You keep hearing about that from influencers, and they are 100% right. Check this out. I got up and I wanted to get my morning coffee at Starbucks, and now I know I'm on the Strip, and yeah, things are going to cost a little bit more, but my typically $7 mocha at Starbucks on the Strip pushes $14. What's up with that? It's the exact same drink, but costs almost twice as much. Wow. So we're going to go ahead and check out several retro gaming stores. There's a franchise down here called Retro City Games. Now, I originally visited these stores during the pandemic, so it's been that long since I've been down here and visited these stores, and since then they've moved locations and expanded quite a bit. So I was very excited to check this out, including the first store we're going to visit, which is in Henderson. And I'm told that this technically butts up against Vegas. I guess these two cities kind of run together. I can't actually tell where one ends and another begins, and it's really close. It's like 15-20 minutes away from the Strip. This is their flagship location where they get the most product traded in. Everything is tested here, and you can see that as you walk in. Right behind the counter, there is just I don't know what you would call this, a mound or a pile of stuff that's waiting to be processed, or maybe it's been processed and it's going to be, either put out on the shelves or it's going to be sent to other stores. But yeah, it's like, wow, okay, they're not messing around here. First thing I noticed, there is just a ton of rental cases. I don't think I've seen this many in one location before. I mean, was there a rental store in the Vegas area that closed down and had these? Or maybe a particular collector had them and then traded them in or sold them to the store? That was pretty wild. Also, I noticed that there's a lot of GameStop and retail promo stuff in here, posters and standees and things like that. They just had a bunch of it. So again, I wonder if as maybe some of these other places closed down, or I don't know, but they ended up with a lot of them. Check out these Legend of Dragoon figures. So this is something I've never seen before, and for those of you that know, Legend of Dragoon was a really cool PlayStation 1 RPG that never quite got the due I think it deserved, and yeah, here's some figures for that. That's pretty wild. And speaking of wild, I always thought that this GameCube controller with this keyboard, this full-size keyboard built into it, is so wild. I guess everybody who played Phantasy Star Online wanted one of these, so they have one. I also noticed that they have a lot of boxed systems here, PlayStation 3, the Nintendo 64, even a Texas Instruments 99, TI 99 here in the box. And they've got all sorts of handhelds in the box, stuff like that. So that's pretty cool for you collectors out there that want the boxes. Here's some Jaguar CD games. That's crazy. That's not something that you see every day. And then over here, there was a bunch of boxed vintage gaming systems like the Action Max, the Apollo 2001, the Sears Super Video Arcade, the Odyssey 100. They were telling me that at one point last year, this store had a massive Nintendo Switch trade-in. Like 1,000 Switch titles were brought in from one collector. Now, they've sold most of those, but there's still a good amount of those kind of weird and uncommon Switch games still sitting here. So that was kind of fun to see. And these stores aren't about just the rare and collectible stuff. I mean, that's obviously the most fun stuff to look at. That's kind of what draws the eye. But they also have a bunch of newer titles too, like, you know, for the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox, you know, all that sort of stuff, all the retro systems as well. Even this copy of Deadly Creatures on the Wii. That is a total hidden gem, and it's exclusive to that system. So, a little tip for you there. You know, at this point, I have more social media accounts than I've actually created. Because yes, people have tried impersonating me online. Maybe you've seen some of these, right? These fake profiles, fake messages and comments trying to trick my followers. It's annoying. And the wild part, they don't need any hacking skills. They just grab my personal information off the internet like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Your phone number, address, your relatives, random background details, they're all sitting on people's search sites, neatly organized for scammers and weirdos. You know, data brokers collect this stuff, they sell it, then they resell it, and somehow they act surprised when it's used for scams and identity theft. That's why I use Incogni. Incogni automatically tracks down where your personal data is being published and removes it from hundreds of data brokers and people's search sites. And if something slips through, Incogni's new custom removals feature is incredible. You send them a link to the site that's exposing your info, and a dedicated privacy expert handles the takedown. This can be websites exposing your personal information like news portals, sports publications, health apps, and more. Setup takes just a few minutes and runs quietly in the background, and Incogni has been independently verified by Deloitte. Which means this isn't vaporware or empty claims, it actually works. You can see here on this dashboard that they've already contacted over 700 companies to remove my data. You know, I feel like we're just expected to accept that our personal information is going to be available online because there's all these big data breaches, right? You feel powerless. But I refuse to be okay with that. It's my information and I want to control who has it. So use my link, incogni.com/MetalJesus in the description, and use the checkout code MetalJesus to get 60% off the Incogni annual plan. The truth is, they can't harm you if they can't find you. And I want to thank Incogni for sponsoring this video. And then it was recommended that I drive a little bit, maybe about 10 minutes or so, and check out the second location, which is in South Vegas, and it's inside a mall. And this one focuses more on movies, but again, it still has a really good selection. Right off the bat, you notice in the back there, they have these massive Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. That is pretty cool. Never seen those before. Obviously, there's a lot of TMNT figures out there, but I've never seen these large ones like that. That was pretty cool. Another thing that caught my eye is this box set of Baldur's Gate 2, Planescape Torment, these 3 games here on Switch, this big collector's edition. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And I mentioned this location also has a bunch of movies, both VHS and DVD movies, more than any other location that they have. And, it got me thinking, I wonder if maybe there was like a Movie Land store in this mall at one point. Do you remember those back in the day where you'd go to the mall and have a dedicated store just for physical movies? So I don't know, maybe that closed down in this mall and somebody just traded it all in, but it's cool to see. You guys know me, I am a sucker for big box PC games, and of course I was immediately drawn over to this section here. And, I have a lot of these already, but there was a couple that I didn't have. And if you're curious what I picked up during this trip, I'm actually going to have a future pickups video that I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to show you all of that stuff in there. But yeah, I love digging through the big box PC games. I didn't realize, or maybe I forgot, that Stubbs the Zombie came out on the Switch, and so they've got a big collector's edition of that. That's such a cool original Xbox game. It was exclusive at the time, and then it kind of got rebooted during the PlayStation 4 era. And I guess it makes sense that it came out on the Switch, but I don't think I knew that that was the case. So it was cool to see that. Drunken Master Paul and I were obsessed with this rhythm game when it first came out. And this is before Rock Band and all that, Guitar Hero. This is the game that started that all. And it was a really cool mix of electronic music, rock music. Yeah, we were obsessed with this game. We loved it. Check out the Space Invaders Anniversary Box Collector's Edition for the PlayStation 2. I've never seen this before, and I guess there is a mini arcade in there that you play the PlayStation 2 version on. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but again, never seen this before. And then check out this back room, again, full of unprocessed games and hardware, just waiting to go out either on the shelves here at this store or other locations. All right, I am hungry, and my friend Antonio and I we're going to go to one of my favorite Szechuan places in all of Vegas. It's called Shang Artisan Noodle, and they are known for their hand-pulled noodle dishes, and they are absolutely delicious. So this is not actually on the Strip. You have to go a little bit, maybe 5 or 10 minutes off the Strip, but dude, if you like Chinese Szechuan, this is the place. Now we're going to check out their newest location, which is a store that they opened in the Forum Mall that's next to Caesar's Palace. And this is a wild one. If you've never been here, this is such a cool mall. It's, as you can see from this footage, it's absolutely gorgeous inside. It's an absolute experience. Even if you don't buy anything, you should go if you are on the Strip because it's absolutely beautiful. But as you can see here, it's a little bit smaller than their other stores, primarily because it's more expensive, obviously, to put a store here on the Strip. Initially, I assumed that they would want to try and grab all those high rollers, those gamblers winning thousands of dollars in the casinos, and therefore only, stock the really expensive stuff. I mean, that would make sense, right? But actually, it's a mix. Yes, they've got sealed, rare, and even some graded games here for, people who win a lot of money in the casinos, right? They got big bucks to spend. But they also have a lot of everyday games here as well for families that might be staying or people who just want to kind of pick up something at a normal price. So I was very surprised to see this. I like how the store is designed to appeal to everybody, not just hardcore collectors. And, again, it makes sense because a lot of families and regular folk do stay on the Strip. They might be here for vacation or maybe they're traveling at a convention. And, having the only retro gaming store in this area right here, again, is kind of a smart idea. That said, I do want to show you some of the more interesting things that I found in the store, including a full-size PlayStation 2 development computer. Now, you've seen some of the smaller ones, like the test units, but this thing is a full computer designed to build PlayStation 2 games. And yeah, this is not cheap. I mean, these typically go for thousands of dollars online. They're very hard to find. And to be quite honest, I don't even know how useful they are because they probably don't work without a Sony license. But again, if you're a hardcore PS2 collector, that's a pretty cool find. They also have this lime green Mountain Dew original Xbox. And I do see these occasionally at expos when I go, but rarely with the original box. So that's pretty cool. Again, there's also some rare Atari Jaguar games here. I don't know what it is, but I've seen more Atari Jaguar games on this trip than I have in a long time. So it must be something to do with Vegas. I don't know. And speaking of something you don't see every day, at least I don't, this is the Digiblast. So this was released back in 2005, and it was primarily designed to play cartoons on a cartridge, kind of like the, how those Game Boy Advance video cartridges worked. This is like that. So, and I guess it would actually play a few games as well, and they've got a couple here. I've never seen this before. I don't even know if it was sold here. So very uncommon in the US. Here's something pretty cool. This is the Avenge Sevenfold PlayStation 3 controller. That metal band partnered up with Scuff to make the special edition controller, so fully licensed, and yeah, looks pretty badass. And how about this brand new in-box copy of Steel Battalion on the original Xbox? You know, you'll see these in the box sometimes, often kind of beat up, but rarely do you see one in this condition and brand new. They mentioned that because it's Vegas and there's a lot of conventions there, a lot of famous people come through, so they've got a decent selection of signed merchandise. These two statues are pretty cool, the first one being from Killzone, and the second, obviously, Tomb Raider, Lara Croft. Those are awesome. They're full size, too. They're big. And like most retro gaming stores, they have a decent selection of Pokemon cards. As a matter of fact, while I was standing there, it seems like that's what the majority of people who just kind of wandered in were really interested in. So many people are addicted to that cardboard crack. And again, they just had a bunch of random stuff in here, both, you know, collectible and kind of hard to find, but also really common stuff too. A lot of Switch games, and I mean, they even had Atari games. So they had a little, little for everybody here, which again is pretty cool. So if you happen to be on the Strip, you know, staying near Caesar's Palace, and you're going to go to the Forum Mall anyways, you might want to pop in and see what they have. Later that night, I was kind of hungry, and so I heard about this place that does all plant-based tacos called Tacotarian. I was like, okay, I mean, reasonably priced for the Strip, and so I thought I'd check it out. So again, these are all plant-based, and they were really tasty. Actually, this place is highly recommended. I was very surprised. And then I heard that there's a pretty decent arcade fairly close to the Strip that I'd never been to, and I wanted to check it out. So I was a little bit early in the day, and it was mostly empty when I was there. Again, it's about maybe half a block off the Strip, so you know, you have to kind of look for this. But I do like going into these places to see what types of arcade games that people are currently playing. And as I walk around here, you can see that there's a lot of arcade racing games, which makes sense, you know, because most of them will support 2 to 4 players, which is great. There was also a lot of, I guess you would call these like carnival style chance games. I'm not entirely sure what these type of games are called. But there was a bunch of those here, and you know, like I said, I was actually here in the middle of the week and a little bit early, so it was pretty dead, but I was able to walk around and kind of, you know, take some footage. So yeah, this place I bet probably gets jumping at night. That would be my guess, right? You know, come off the Strip, a little bit of buzz going on, play some arcade games. And so that, guys, is my quick little trip down to Las Vegas to do some video game hunting. And like I said, I will share all of the pickups with you in an upcoming games pickup video. I got some really interesting stuff, good variety of stuff, so I will share that all with you. So make sure and be subscribed. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.